He didn't know I was awake when he hit me. The slap landed like a flat stone thrown into still water, quiet, sharp, and spreading through every part of me. I didn't scream. I didn't even move. I just lay there, tasting blood, watching the shadow of his hand fall back to his side like nothing had happened. But what he didn't know, what he could never imagine, was that his hand didn't break me. It woke me. And the woman who wakes up is more dangerous than the woman who suffers. Hey family, before we dive into this powerful story, don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss the next one. Please like this video, drop a comment to share your thoughts or lessons you learned, and give your honest review. I'd love to hear what you think. Now, let's begin the story. The night he hit me, something ancient inside me opened its eyes. It wasn't the first time he raised his hand, but it was the first time it landed with full force, like he wanted to mark me. The slap cracked through the room, sharp enough to silence the frogs croaking outside our window. Even the moon hid. Albany town went quiet in a way that felt personal, like the world paused to watch what I would do. I tasted blood on my lip. Metallic.
Warm. Real.
I didn't scream.
I didn't gasp.
I didn't touch my cheek. I just looked at him, really looked. He was breathing heavily, chest rising like a man who had been running. His eyes were dark, angry, but underneath that anger was something worse. Satisfaction. He believed this moment meant victory. He believed I was finally broken enough to obey. He didn't understand. The slap didn't break me. It woke me. I grew up in Oba village, surrounded by women who carried storms inside them. My grandmother used to say, "A woman is water. She can drown or she can cleanse, but she never stays still." That night, lying in the bed beside the man who pretended to love me, I felt the water in me begin to rise. He muttered under his breath and went to sleep like a man who trusted the darkness to protect him. His snores filled the room. I stared at the cracked ceiling, tracing the lines with my eyes the way children find shapes in clouds. Every line felt like a reminder. You are not finished. You are not powerless. You are not trapped. I wasn't thinking of revenge yet. Not fully. I was thinking of survival. I was thinking of escape. I was thinking of the version of myself that existed before him. The girl from Oba who laughed loudly, who dreamed without asking permission. I pressed my palm to my cheek. It was warm, swollen, but steady. Somewhere deep in my heart, I felt something shift into place, like a door I had been afraid to touch quietly opening. I closed my eyes and whispered to myself, "He thinks he won." But that night, silently, fiercely, dangerously, I began to wake. Before I tell you the full story, you must understand where I come from. Oba village is not the kind of place people put on maps. It's a quiet land of red soil and tall palm trees, a place where children run through dusty paths and old women sit under mango trees telling stories that feel older than the wind. In Oba, women carry the town. We carry the farms. We carry the babies. We carry the secrets. We carry the pain. And somehow we still laugh loud enough to scare sadness away. My mother, Grace, used to say, "A woman's heart is a calabash. It can hold sorrow, wisdom, fire, and water all at once." Growing up, I saw this everywhere. Women who endured storms but walked like queens. I grew up believing strength was my inheritance. As a girl, I dreamed big. I dreamed of cities with bright lights, of writing stories, of seeing beyond Oren. I wasn't running away. I just believed there was more for me out there. When I turned 19, I left for Albany town with a small bag, a big smile, and my grandmother warning in my ear. Be careful of men who smile too quickly. Sharp knives hide in smooth cloth. I laughed then. I didn't understand. In Albany, everything felt alive. Buses honking, traders shouting, music spilling from kiosks, vendors frying puff-puff that perfumed the whole street. It was noisy, colorful, full of stories. That's where I met him, Kalechi. But back then, he wasn't the man who would bruise my skin and spirit. He was warm eyes, calm voice, gentle touch. A man who stood in a crowded bookshop pretending he loved poetry. I didn't know he was studying me like a hunter watching prey before striking. If I had known, I would have run. If I had known, I would have listened to the whispers of my ancestors that night he approached me. If I had known, I would have walked away from the soft smile that would later turn sharp. But love, or what we think is love, can blind even the strongest woman. When he hit me that night in our small yellow room, something from Oba stirred inside me. That girl who grew up watching strong women survive impossible storms? She came back, and she wasn't gentle. I can still remember the exact moment I met Kelechi. I was standing in a dusty second-hand bookstall squeezed between two noisy bus stops. The whole place smelled of old pages, kerosene, and roasted corn from a nearby vendor. It wasn't a magical setting, just raw, ordinary, everyday life. But maybe that's why his smile felt different. He picked up a poetry book by a writer I adored and said, "This one saved my life once." Later, I would realize he didn't even know 3 lines from it. But in that moment, my chest opened like a soft flower. I thought, finally, someone who understands me. He listened too closely. He laughed at the right moments. He looked at me like I was the only person in Ebony Town. I didn't know he studied people the way termites study old wood, quietly, patiently, until the structure becomes weak. We talked for an hour. He walked me to the bus stop. He asked for my number. That same evening, he sent a message. "I've never met a woman with your spirit." I should have asked myself, how could he know my spirit in one day? But I was young. I was hopeful. I wanted to believe good things could come easily. All my life in Oba, I had heard stories of men who arrived like blessings and turned into curses, but I thought those stories were warnings for other women.
Not me.
Kelechi courted me with a softness that felt healing. He bought me small gifts, helped me carry my market bags, told me I deserved the world. He showed up whenever I needed help, even before I asked. At first, I thought it was love. Later, I learned it was surveillance. After 3 months, he introduced me to his mother, a quiet woman who smiled without warmth. 3 weeks later, he proposed in front of his friends at a local restaurant. Everyone clapped.
He cried.
I said yes. It was fast. Too fast. But in my heart, speed felt like passion. Now, looking back, I realized something painful. Predators don't chase you. They charm you slowly. They convince you that the cage is a gift. And by the time you realize it's a cage, they already have the key. The first signs were so small, I almost missed them. It started with little corrections. Don't laugh so loud. Don't talk too much when we're outside. Why do you wear bright colors? You attract too much attention. At first, he said these things with a smile, like he was protecting me. So I changed myself slowly, without noticing. I wore softer colors. I spoke quieter. I kept my joy folded inside like a cloth I didn't want to stain. Then he started choosing my friends for me. "I don't like the way Joy talks," he would say. "She's too wild." Or, "Your cousin Nene is jealous of you. Stop visiting her." He didn't forbid me directly. He simply made everything uncomfortable until I stopped on my own. Manipulation loves silence. It doesn't shout. It whispers. One day, I laughed too loudly at something my neighbor said. His face hardened instantly. Later that night, he said, "A married woman should behave with dignity." I wasn't married yet, but in his mind, he already owned me. My father visited Ebony and tried to read his spirit. Baba always believed a person character sits in their eyes like a small fire. He watched Kelechi closely that day, and when he left, he held my arm gently and said, "Look deeper, my daughter. A man can hide his teeth inside a smile." But I brushed it aside. I thought he was being overprotective. I told myself my father didn't understand modern relationships. I should have listened. The first real warning came the day a male coworker called me after work. It was a simple call about a work schedule. But when Kelechi heard his voice, something shifted. His jaw tightened, his eyes turned dark, and he snatched the phone from my hand. "He shouldn't be calling you," he said. I tried to explain. He didn't want explanations. Instead, he stayed angry for 3 days, refusing to touch my hand or speak with warmth. When he finally apologized, He bought me a dress and kissed my forehead like a father consoling a child. I thought that meant love, but it meant control. Looking back, I can see the truth clearly. He didn't need to shout to take my freedom. He only needed time. It took place in Albany Town Hall, a cream-colored building with old fans that creaked as they turned. The hall smelled of powder, jollof rice, sweat, and fresh flowers. Everyone said we looked perfect together, the quiet man and the smiling woman. But inside me, something felt off. I remember standing behind the curtain before walking out, my hands shaking slightly. Not from nerves, from an unexplainable heaviness in my chest. Like a quiet voice inside me whispering, "This path is wrong." But tradition is strong. Family expectations are strong. Hope is even stronger. So I walked. My mother wiped tears from her eyes as she adjusted my veil. "You will grow old together," she said. "May your home be peaceful." My father, though smiling, looked at Kelechi with cautious eyes. During the ceremony, his grip on my hand was too tight. Not romantic tight, possessive tight. I told myself he was simply excited. Love can deceive with softness. After the wedding, we moved into a small two-bedroom house near the center of Albany. The walls were painted yellow. People said yellow brings warmth. For us, yellow only trapped heat and tension. At first, everything felt perfect. He made me tea in the mornings.
He cooked on weekends.
He whispered sweet things into my ear. But sweetness can also be a mask. 3 months into the marriage, he stopped helping in the kitchen. 6 months in, he stopped wanting to hear about my day. A year in, he stopped touching me with love. His eyes became cold. His voice became sharp. But the most painful part wasn't his anger. It was his silence. When a man withdraws his warmth, it leaves a woman feeling like she's walking barefoot on broken shells. I started to doubt myself. Maybe I was too demanding. Maybe I talked too much. Maybe I wasn't enough. That is how control grows, quietly, like mold in a closed room. The day after our first anniversary, I woke up and realized something heartbreaking. I had married a stranger. The first bruise he gave me wasn't on my skin. It was on my spirit. It happened after a long day at work. I came home exhausted, carrying groceries, my back aching from standing all day. When I entered the house, he was sitting on the couch, eyes glued to his phone. "Welcome," I said softly. He didn't answer. I thought he didn't hear me, so I walked closer. "How was your day?"
Still nothing.
Only the sound of him scrolling. It was the kind of silence that punishes. Every minute of it cut deeper than any slap. That was the first spiritual bruise. The next came the day I burned the stew. The kerosene stove was acting up, and I was distracted. When he tasted the food, he threw the spoon onto the table. "You're getting careless," he snapped. Even children know how to focus. He didn't hit me then, but something inside me cracked slightly. One night, he grabbed my wrist too hard. Another night, he pulled my hair when he thought I wasn't listening. When I told him it hurt, he said, "You're too soft. Toughen up." The bruises were small at first. Little fingerprints on my arms. A scratch near my elbow. Nothing too visible. Nothing too dramatic. But they were warnings. Little storms announcing a bigger one. I learned to wear long sleeves. I learned to smile in front of neighbors. I learned to hide myself. Women don't talk about these things easily. There's shame, confusion, fear. But the worst part is the self-blame. I kept asking myself, what did I do wrong? How can I make him happy again? I didn't know then that you cannot heal a man who enjoys hurting you. One night, after an argument about nothing, absolutely nothing, he pushed me against the wall. Not too hard, not too soft. Just enough to show me he could. He didn't apologize. He didn't explain. He simply said, "Don't annoy me." That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling fans spinning lazily. I knew, deep down, that something dark was growing in our home. But I wasn't ready to face it.
Not yet.
Our house began to change before I did. The yellow walls, once bright, began to peel. The ceiling corners gathered slow-moving cobwebs I didn't have the energy to clean. The floor tiles felt colder. The air felt heavy. Homes carry emotions. Ours carried fear. The neighbors noticed something too. Mrs. Ajayi, the old woman who sells akara across the street, stopped me one evening. "My daughter," she whispered, "your eyes look dim. Are you eating well?" I smiled and said yes, but she didn't believe me. Women like her, old, wise, with their feet buried deep in the soil of life, can sense danger even without seeing it. Inside the house, Kelechi had grown distant. He rarely looked at me. When he did, it was as if he was studying a problem. His anger no longer needed a reason. Sometimes it came from nowhere, like a sudden thunderstorm. One Saturday afternoon, I asked him if we could repaint the house. The place felt gloomy, heavy. He looked at me with boredom. "For what? You're too dramatic. A wall is a wall." That was the moment I realized something. Darkness doesn't spread by accident. It spreads because someone welcomes it. I tried to bring life back into the house. I bought small flowers for the windows. I played soft music while cooking. I opened the curtains so that sunlight could touch the walls. But he hated the sunlight. "It's too bright," he would say, closing the curtains again. He didn't want a home. He wanted a cave, a place where he could hide his shadows. One evening, when he slammed the door after returning from work, the picture frame of our wedding fell and cracked on the floor. I picked it up slowly. The glass had shattered, but the photo remained untouched, our smiling faces forever trapped in a lie. As I stared at it, a strange thought whispered in my heart. Things break before people notice the cracks. I placed the picture face down in a drawer. I didn't know it then, but the house falling apart was a sign. A warning. A prophecy. Something inside me was getting ready to break open too. The first real clue came from his phone. He had grown strangely protective of it. He kept it face down. He jumped whenever it vibrated. He took it with him even when he went to the bathroom. One evening, while he was showering, his phone lit up on the table. A message. Just one line. "I miss you. Is she sleeping?" My heart didn't race. It didn't shatter. It simply stilled, like a lake freezing in one instant. I stared at the message until the letters felt burned into my mind. The calmness scared me. I should have been angry. I should have cried. But I felt nothing but a cold certainty. I had always sensed there was someone else. Women always know. The distance, the sudden politeness, the unnecessary anger, the careful showering before touching me. Everything made sense. When he came out of the bathroom with a towel around his waist, I looked at him the same way a doctor looks at an X-ray that confirms what she already suspected. He didn't notice. Men like him never imagine their wives are watching. Later that night, I pretended to sleep. He waited until my breathing became slow, then slipped out of bed and went to the sitting room. I heard the low rumble of his voice. I couldn't hear words, but I knew the tone, soft, warm, gentle. The voice he no longer used with me. When he returned to bed, he kissed my forehead. He thought I was sleeping. He thought he still had the upper hand. But something in me clicked into place. A quiet door opened. A tiny flame lit up. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I needed to think. I needed to observe. I needed to understand who she was. And most importantly, I needed to understand who I was becoming. Because that night, as I lay beside him, pretending to sleep, I realized something powerful. When a woman stops reacting, she is not defeated. She is planning. A week after reading the message, something strange happened. I was at the market buying tomatoes when a woman approached me. She was tall, with long braided hair and bright red lipstick. She looked out of place among the market women, too polished, too expensive. She smiled politely. "Are you Mira?" My heart paused. Who was she? Why did she know my name? "Yes," I answered cautiously. "I've seen you before," she said. "At the bus station with a man. Your husband." I nodded slowly. She hesitated, then looked down. "I'm sorry. I don't want trouble. But a friend of mine is involved with him. And she doesn't know he's married." My breath caught. Blood roared in my ears. The market noise disappeared. The shouting, the bargaining, the laughter all gone. She continued. "I told her he looks like trouble." She didn't listen. So I came myself. If he's hurting you, I'll leave before he destroys you." Her voice trembled slightly, like she knew pain too. Before I could speak, she walked away.
Just like that.
Like a whispered warning from the universe. I stood in the middle of the market holding a bag of tomatoes, not knowing whether to cry or laugh. The betrayal I suspected was now confirmed by a stranger. That made it heavier. More real. More cruel. I walked home slowly, thinking about every moment he had distanced himself. Every night he came home smelling of strange perfume. Every lie he told casually. When I entered the house, he was sitting on the couch, phone in hand, smiling at whatever he was reading. He looked up at me briefly. "You're late," he said. I nodded and went to the kitchen. There was traffic. But inside me, something shifted sharply. Now I had a direction. Now I had a purpose. Now I had a name for the storm I was preparing. Revenge does not begin with anger. It begins with clarity. After the market encounter, I became a shadow in my own home. Not a weak shadow, an observing one. I watched him closely. The way he smiled at his phone. The way he suddenly cared about his appearance. The way he hid receipts. The way he left the house earlier and came home later. Everything about him was a clue. I didn't shout. I didn't accuse him. I didn't show pain. My silence made him bold. He began staying out till midnight. He claimed it was work. But I knew work didn't smell like strange perfume or leave lipstick on collars. And work didn't make a man glow with the kind of happiness he no longer brought home. But instead of confronting him, I grew softer, quieter, sweeter. I cleaned more, cooked better meals, smiled more gently, not because I wanted to please him, but because a calm woman is the most dangerous kind. A storm does not warn the trees. It moves silently until it strikes. One evening, he came home unusually happy. He didn't even notice the way I watched him from the kitchen doorway. His steps were light, careless. His guard was down. That's when I realized. He believed he had already defeated me. He believed the silence meant surrender. He believed my softness meant fear. He believed the marriage belonged to him alone. But inside my chest, something sharp was growing. Not hatred, not anger, strategy. If I was going to escape, truly escape, I couldn't just walk away. He wouldn't allow that. Men like him never release what they believe they own.
No.
I had to prepare. I had to collect. I had to make sure that when I left, he would have no strings tied to me, no excuses, no access, no power. I lay beside him that night listening to him snore softly. I stared at the ceiling again, but this time, I wasn't the broken woman from before. I was a woman writing her exit. And exits written in silence are the most powerful. Because when a woman becomes quiet, the storm is already on its way. The night I saw the message, the breeze outside was soft, warm, almost tender, the kind of wind that carries secrets from house to house. I was in the sitting room, folding clothes, when his phone lit up beside me. It wasn't intentional. I wasn't spying. I had stopped spying a while ago because spying is something you do when you still hope. And hope had left my house quietly, like a visitor who realized they were not welcome. The message was short, just 9 words. But those 9 words were enough to finish something inside me. I can't wait until she's out of the picture. She.
Me.
The woman who had given him everything. The woman he saw as something to remove. My hands froze above the clothes, the fabric soft between my fingers, but my body stiff like wood. I stared at those words again and again until they felt carved into my chest. I didn't cry. Tears are for shock. Tears are for fresh wounds. But this wound wasn't fresh. It had been bleeding quietly for years. In that moment, my silence deepened into something else, something sharper. When he walked back into the room, I lifted my head slowly and smiled at him. A calm smile, a dangerous smile. He didn't notice the difference. He never noticed the things that mattered. He kissed my forehead, took his phone, and walked away humming, as if the world was sweet. After he left, I sat there for a long time, listening to the fridge hum, listening to the generator in the neighbor's compound start up, listening to a baby cry somewhere far. Life was continuing, but something in my own life had stopped breathing. That message didn't break me. It freed me. It told me what I already knew but refused to admit. I was married to a stranger. A dangerous stranger. And if he was planning to throw me out of the picture, then I needed to paint a new picture. One where I was the one holding the brush. That night, I slept lightly, but not in fear. In clarity. The kind of clarity a woman gets when she finally stops loving and starts seeing. The next morning, the sunlight felt different. Sharper. Like it was cutting through the curtains just to remind me I was still alive. He left early for work, rushing out with the same fake tenderness he always wore when he wanted something later. The moment his car drove away, I locked the door and sat on the edge of the bed. I held my cheek, remembering the night he hit me. The sting had faded, but the lesson hadn't. Women don't leave because of the first slap, or even the second. We leave when the story becomes clear. And my story was now written in bold letters. I took a deep breath and picked up my phone. My first call was to Mama Temi, my mother's oldest friend, a retired court clerk who knew the law better than many lawyers. She listened quietly as I spoke, her breathing steady. When I finished, she said only 4 words. Come to my house. I got into a tricycle and headed to her place with a scarf tied firmly around my head, as if I was preparing for battle. Her house was small, painted a gentle cream color, filled with the scent of dried hibiscus and old books. She studied me carefully, her eyes sharp, her silence heavy. You're ready, she finally said. Not are you ready? But you're ready. She pulled out forms from a drawer, legal forms I had never seen before, and explained each one to me slowly. She taught me how to protect myself without raising alarm. She told me which documents mattered, which accounts I should open, which steps I needed to take before making my move. She even brought out a small notebook and wrote a list for me. I felt something rising inside me. Not fear, not anger. Strength. By the time I left her house, I felt taller somehow. Lighter. My steps on the dusty road back home made small clouds rise behind me like I was shaking off old pain. At home, I cleaned the kitchen, made lunch, washed his shirts, normal things because normalcy is the best disguise. But in my chest, a quiet revolution had begun. The first real clue came on a Saturday afternoon. He said he was attending a work retreat. That alone was strange. His company barely organized staff meetings, talk less of retreats. But I nodded and even packed his bag for him. I wasn't the old version of myself anymore. I didn't ask questions. I observed. When he left, I went to the market, not to follow him, not to chase the truth, but to breathe. The market was loud, colorful, alive. Women shouted prices, children chased each other, men carried sacks of onions on their shoulders. Life had rhythm there, and I needed rhythm. But while buying peppers at one stall, I saw her. A woman in a bright red dress, walking with confidence, her hair bouncing behind her. She was talking loudly on the phone, saying the name I had lived with for years. His name. My heart beat faster, but my feet stayed grounded. I followed her slowly, not too close, not too far, just enough to hear bits of her conversation. Yes, he's coming. Yes, he said she won't be a problem for long. Her voice was carefree, careless. She didn't know the weight of the words she was carrying.
She stopped at a stall to buy fruit.
When she turned, our eyes met. She smiled politely, not knowing who I was. I smiled back. Her smile was innocent, too innocent for the kind of man she thought she was receiving into her life. She looked like someone who believed small lies because she wanted big dreams. Someone who didn't know she was sharing a man with danger. You look familiar, she said lightly. I chuckled. We all look familiar in this town. She laughed softly, then walked away, swinging her fruit bag in one hand, humming a tune. I watched her disappear into the crowd. I didn't hate her. She wasn't the enemy. She was another one of his victims. She just didn't know it yet. As I held my shopping bag tightly, something in me hardened. If she knew about me and still stayed with him, that was her choice. But if she didn't know, then she needed the truth. And I was ready to give it to her. The next day, I dressed simply. Nothing dramatic, nothing emotional, and went to see her. I waited until I knew he was at work, so there would be no scene. Her apartment was in a newer part of town where buildings stood tall and proud, painted in bright colors that tried too hard to look expensive. I knocked once, then again. When she opened the door, her eyes widened slightly, like she remembered me from the market. "Can I help you?" "Yes," I said softly. "My name is Mira. I think we need to talk." Her shoulders tensed. She stepped aside and allowed me in. The apartment smelled of jasmine and fresh laundry, a scent too calm for the storm that lived under her roof. We sat opposite each other. Silence stretched between us. I took a deep breath and rolled up my sleeve, revealing the bruise that still lived on my arm like a shadow that refused to leave. Her face changed immediately. The confidence drained from her eyes, replaced by fear and confusion. Who did that to you?" "Your boyfriend," I said quietly. "My husband." Her hand flew to her mouth. Her knees shook. She whispered, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." I believed her. Her shock was too raw to be a performance. I pulled out my phone and showed her the messages, the transfers, the photos. She stared at every piece of evidence, her breaths coming out sharp and short. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. I would never. I'm so sorry." "It's not your fault," I said. "He lied to both of us." She nodded, wiping tears quickly, like she didn't want to look weak. When I stood to leave, she grabbed my hand gently. "What will you do?" I looked into her eyes and said the truth. "Everything." She closed her eyes, exhaled deeply, and then, in a trembling voice, said, "I'll help you." That was the moment I realized it. He hadn't just underestimated me. He had underestimated all the women he thought he could break. There is a kind of strength that doesn't roar. It whispers. It moves slowly. It grows like roots beneath the ground. That was the kind of strength I carried in the days that followed. The woman in the red dress, her name was Lami, kept her word. She sent me everything she had. Dates, receipts, hotel bookings, voice notes he didn't know she had saved. She even wrote a signed statement after speaking with her cousin, who was a paralegal. Every piece of truth she sent me was a stone. I was building a mountain. Meanwhile, at home, I played my role perfectly. I cooked his meals, listened to his complaints, smiled when he wanted me to smile. He didn't know that every gentle word I spoke was counted, measured, stored. One night, he came home smelling like a perfume that wasn't mine. I helped him remove his tie, pretending not to notice the glitter on his shirt collar. He thought I was blind. He didn't know I had learned to see everything. I started spending evenings with Mama Temi again. We went through documents line by line. She explained things patiently, how financial freezes worked, how restraining orders were filed, how evidence had to be organized. "You're not fighting a man," she told me one night. "You're fighting his ego. And ego is the most foolish enemy." I nodded, writing every word down. We prepared quietly, the way women prepare during war, not with weapons, but with wisdom. Then came the day I found the final piece. He forgot to log out of his office email on our shared laptop. I saw messages he sent using the company's funds for personal trips. Photos of him in hotels during hours he claimed he was working late. A complaint filed by someone in his team about inappropriate behavior. I didn't panic. I didn't breathe loudly. I took screenshots. All of them. While he slept that night, snoring softly like a man with an innocent conscience, I sat in the dark and arranged every screenshot carefully. My file was thick. My evidence was complete. He thought I was breaking, but I was building. And the woman who builds in silence is the one the world should fear. Truth is like pepper. When it enters your eyes, you cannot pretend it isn't there. And the truth of my marriage was beginning to sting so sharply that even breathing felt heavy. That evening, he came home unusually cheerful. He whistled as he walked in, dropped his bag on the couch, and asked what we were eating. I watched him closely, the way a hunter studies an animal that doesn't know it has already been caught. When he sat down to eat, he said, "I might be traveling next weekend for work." Again.
Work.
The same lie he had used again and again, stretching it until it became thin, transparent. I nodded. "Should I pack a bag for you?" He blinked. Just once. But that blink revealed something. Confusion. He didn't expect me to agree. He expected a fight. A question. Suspicion. My calmness rattled him more than anger ever did. "Yes, yes, you can pack," he said, clearing his throat. That was the moment I realized something important. He relied on my reactions to feel powerful. He needed my fear, my shaking voice, my tears. But I wasn't giving him any of that anymore. After dinner, while he showered, I looked at my reflection in the window. I saw a different woman, one with a fire sitting quietly behind her eyes. Not loud fire, not chaotic fire, controlled fire, the kind that melts metal. Later that night, I heard his phone buzz. Not once. Many times. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. I already had enough truth. Lamy sent me a message around midnight. "Be careful.
He's planning something.
He told me you two have been fighting. He said you might move out soon." Move out? I almost laughed out loud. He was already creating a story where I was the problem. I lay in bed beside him, watching the ceiling fan spin slowly, feeling the truth burn inside my chest. Something was building, rising like steam in a pot. Not fear, not sadness. Resolve. The kind of resolve that changes the direction of a woman's life. And I knew the time to strike was getting close. There is a smell that comes when secrets rot. It isn't physical. You won't smell it in the air. But you feel it, a heaviness, a tension, a strange silence that hovers above everything. That week, our house was full of that invisible smell. He spent more time on phone calls, speaking in low tones, stepping outside whenever I entered a room. His eyes darted around more often, like he was checking if I knew something. He grew impatient at small things. The way I cut vegetables, the volume of the TV, the arrangement of pillows. Once, he snapped at me for not hearing him call my name. I looked at him calmly and said, "I heard you." He froze for a moment, then looked away. Yes, he was beginning to rot with his own secrets. Meanwhile, I was growing stronger. My confidence was blooming quietly, like a stubborn flower pushing through dry soil. Every night, I reviewed my documents. Every morning, I prayed not just for strength, but for clarity. One afternoon, Mama Temi came to visit. She pretended she was dropping off fruits, but in truth, she came to check on me. When he saw her, he stiffened. He never liked strong women around me. She looked around the house slowly, as though she could smell the sickness in the air. When he left the room, she leaned close and whispered, "You're almost ready. Don't rush. Don't fear. Don't warn him." I nodded. But that evening, something unexpected happened. He came home earlier than usual. He stood in the doorway, staring at me with eyes that carried a strange mixture of suspicion and worry. "What have you been up to lately?" he asked. My heart beat once, hard, but I smiled and said, "Nothing. I'm just tired." He stared for several seconds, then slowly nodded. But I knew. He felt it. He felt the shift. Secrets rot fastest when the person hiding them begins to fear exposure. I wasn't afraid of him anymore. But he was beginning to fear the woman who stopped trembling. The first blow in my quiet war came on a sunny Wednesday morning. I had gathered all the company-related evidence, the misused funds, the inappropriate emails, the travel claims that were lies, and sent them anonymously to his HR department. I didn't expect a reaction so fast. I thought it would take days. But by noon, he called me. His voice was sharp, trembling with anger disguised as confusion. "They suspended me," he said. "Something about misuse of company property. Do you know anything about this?" "Me?" I asked softly. "How would I know?" He exhaled loudly, like he was trying to think clearly. "They said they got an email with screenshots. Someone is framing me." "Maybe someone doesn't like you," I said. He fell silent. It was the first domino. When he returned home, he looked broken in a way I had never seen. He paced the living room, sweating even though the fan was on. "This is a mistake," he kept repeating. A stupid mistake. They'll realize it. I made him tea. He didn't drink it. He walked around with his hands on his head, mumbling to himself. His jaw twitched with every thought. He looked like a man who finally realized he wasn't as invisible as he believed. I watched him quietly. Not with pity. Not with joy. With understanding. This was what accountability looked like for a man who believed he was untouchable. Later, when he calmed down, he sat on the edge of the bed and whispered, "I think someone is trying to destroy me." I looked into his eyes and said, "People don't destroy you without reason." He swallowed hard. For the first time, he couldn't meet my gaze. That night, he slept lightly, tossing and turning, waking up to check his phone every hour. He wasn't used to pressure. He wasn't used to consequences. The first domino was small, but it had begun to fall. And once one domino moves, the rest must follow. I lay beside him, thinking of everything I had endured and everything I was about to reclaim. He thought he was sinking, but the truth was, I had only just begun to drain the water. Lami and I met again 2 days later. We chose a quiet cafe where nobody knew either of us. She looked tired, the kind of tired that comes when your illusions break. As soon as she sat down, she said, "He told me you moved back to your mother's house." I laughed softly. Did he? Interesting. He also said you've been threatening him. Did he also say why? Her eyes softened.
No.
He never tells the truth. I know that now. We sat there in silence for a moment, listening to the low hum of conversations around us. 2 women came in holding hands, laughing. A man carried his little boy across the street. The world looked peaceful, but inside us, storms were gathering. "He's losing control," Lami said. "He's panicking. He should." She nodded. "I ended things with him. He tried to convince me that you were crazy, but I didn't believe him. Not anymore." I felt a strange mixture of gratitude and sadness. Gratitude that she saw through him. Sadness that we both had been fooled by the same man. Lami reached across the table and touched my hand lightly. "You're not alone." Her words hit something deep inside me, a part of me that had been alone for years. Before we left the cafe, she whispered, "I hope you burn his lies to the ground." I smiled. "Oh, I will." On my way home, I walked slowly, feeling a strange strength in my chest. When women share stories, storms begin to form, storms that sweep away men who think they can divide us with lies. I wasn't fighting for revenge anymore. I was fighting for the woman I used to be, for the women he might hurt in the future. By the time I reached home, I felt the wind shift around me. The storm was no longer in my heart. It was in the air. He came home that evening wearing the expression of a man who had been slapped by the universe. His steps were uneven, his eyes bloodshot, his shirt wrinkled like he had been pulling at it all day. The moment he entered, he said, "We need to talk." I continued cutting vegetables. About what? You know what? I raised my head slowly.
No.
I don't. He swallowed hard. Someone reported me at work. Someone told HR about personal spending. Someone. Maybe you should ask yourself why someone had that information. His lips parted slightly, and his eyes narrowed. You've changed. You don't talk, you don't complain. You don't even react. You just watch. Maybe I learned from you, I said. He flinched, actually flinched like my words were stones. For the first time in years, he looked afraid. Not because he thought I would hurt him physically, but because he finally sensed something he never expected. I wasn't scared of him anymore. Silence filled the room like thick smoke. He stepped closer. Are you hiding something? I smiled. A slow, calm, peaceful smile. I'm hiding nothing. I'm just done explaining myself. His nostrils flared.
His jaw tightened.
He raised his hand slightly, then stopped halfway, realizing something. The old fear he counted on wasn't there. I didn't step back. I didn't blink. I stared straight into his eyes. And he lowered his hand. That was the moment everything shifted. The power he had fed on, the control he depended on, the fear he had watered in me. It all evaporated. He looked at me as if he was seeing a stranger. A stronger stranger. A dangerous stranger. He whispered, "What are you planning?" I said nothing. And sometimes silence is the loudest answer. That night, he didn't sleep well. He kept turning, breathing heavily, checking the window, the door, the shadows. Not because he feared someone outside, but because he feared the fire burning quietly inside the woman lying next to him. The fire he didn't start. The fire he couldn't stop. The first time I saw the woman in the blue wrapper was at the market. She was tall, slim, and moved with the confidence of someone who believed the world owed her sweetness. I didn't know she had already tasted my husband. I didn't know she had been swallowing the crumbs of my heartbreak long before I even understood I was breaking. I only noticed her because she kept staring at me from a distance. Her eyes followed me like she was studying my face, trying to match it with something she had been told. I could feel her gaze on my skin, and it made my chest tighten. She smiled at me once. A small smile. A guilty smile. A smile that looked like it had been forced out of courage and fear at the same time.
I didn't smile back.
My mother used to say, when guilt wants to confess, it begins with the eyes. That day, I saw confession in her eyes, even though her mouth remained silent. I went home and watched my husband carefully. I didn't ask questions, I didn't shout, I didn't accuse. I only watched, and that watching opened doors. He became restless. He kept misplacing his phone. He kept deleting messages. He kept volunteering to stay out late. He kept refusing food at home. He kept sleeping with his back turned. His guilt was growing teeth. Days later, I saw the same woman again, this time at the bus stop. She avoided my eyes. She held her purse tight, as if she expected a war she didn't have the strength to fight. At that moment, everything inside me fell silent. Not angry, not hurt, just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes before a storm. That night, I cleaned the house slowly, room by room. But I wasn't cleaning the house. I was cleaning my heart, preparing a space for the decision I already knew I would make. My husband didn't know that the woman he chose was the same woman who gave me the courage to finally set myself free. I didn't plan to see her again, but life has its own way of pushing the truth to the surface. It happened on a hot afternoon, the kind that makes the tar on the road shine like black glass. I had gone to the pharmacy to buy painkillers because stress had begun to live in my bones. As I stepped out, I nearly walked straight into her. The woman in the blue wrapper. She froze. I froze. The world stopped breathing for a moment. Her wrapper was different this time, green with small yellow suns on it, but her guilt was the same. I could see it in how she hugged her handbag, how her lips shook, how she kept turning her ring finger, even though there was no ring on it. "Good afternoon," she whispered, her voice cracking like old wood. I didn't answer. I simply looked at her, waiting. She swallowed hard and tried again. I think we need to talk." She had no right to ask, but I was tired of silence, tired of carrying a fire inside me. So I nodded. We sat on a bench beside the pharmacy, under a dusty umbrella that did nothing to stop the sun. She kept rubbing her palms together, like she was trying to wash away the story before she told it. "I didn't know he was married," she started. "He said he was single. He told me he lived alone. I only realized the truth when I saw a picture of you on his phone." My heart stung. Not because of her, but because he had lied with boldness. She continued, her voice trembling. "When I found out, I tried to end it, but he wouldn't stop coming. He made me feel like I owed him something. I swear I didn't want to hurt you." Tears filled her eyes. And for a moment, I pitied her. Because I could see she was not the enemy. She was just another victim of his selfishness. She reached for my hand. I didn't pull away. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Those words, simple as they were, gave me something my husband never gave me, honesty. When I walked away, I felt lighter. Not healed, but lighter. The truth had finally stepped out of the shadows. After meeting her, everything inside me sharpened. I saw things clearly, like fog lifting after a long rainy season. For weeks, my husband had been weaving lies like a fisherman weaving nets. Small lies, big lies, silly lies, Dangerous lies. Lies that didn't even make sense. But now I understood why. He had too many stories running at the same time. And the weight of them was finally dragging him down. One evening, he came home smelling of perfume that didn't belong to me. The scent filled the living room before he even removed his shoes. When I looked at him, he avoided my eyes like they were burning coals. "You're late," I said softly. "Work," he muttered, scratching his head. But he had no bag with him. No files. No laptop. Just excuses. Later, his phone rang. He jumped like someone whose secrets were crawling out of their hiding place. He silenced the call and walked to the balcony to receive it. But he forgot something. The balcony door does not close fully. I could hear everything. "I told you not to call." "No, she doesn't know." I said, "Stop calling. You're making things difficult." I didn't move. I didn't breathe. When he came back in, his face had changed, dark, tight, fearful. He started pacing the room. Then, without looking at me, he snapped. "Why are you staring at me like that?" I wasn't staring. I was simply existing. But guilt makes a person see accusations where there are none. That night, he barely slept. He kept turning, muttering, checking his phone, sweating. Every few minutes, he sighed like someone carrying a heavy secret. His lies were choking him. The next morning, he accused me of something ridiculous, moving his keys. I hadn't touched them. But when a person feels exposed, they start attacking shadows. I didn't argue. I only watched. Every day, he lost a piece of himself. He became paranoid. He became restless. He became loud. Then quiet. Then loud again. His temper grew sharp. His stories became sloppy. His excuses became repeated and recycled. A man drowning in his own lies forgets how to swim. And soon, he would sink so deep that even his pride wouldn't be able to pull him up. People think the end of a marriage happens in one big explosion. A scream, a discovery, a fight, a broken plate, a slammed door. But truth is quieter. For me, it happened on a night when no one shouted, no one cried, and no one touched the other. The silence between us grew so wide that even breathing felt like crossing a river. He was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone, pretending not to be afraid that I might see something. I was in the dining area, pretending to be reading a book. We were like two strangers forced to share the same air. At one point, he glanced up and asked, "You're too quiet these days." I smiled gently, the kind of smile that hides secrets. "I'm just thinking." He nodded and returned to his phone, not realizing that my thoughts had already traveled far ahead of him. That was the night I decided to leave. Not just physically, but mentally, spiritually, completely. I imagined a different life. A life where I woke up without fear. A life where I laughed without watching someone's mood. A life where I didn't have to apologize for breathing. I stayed awake long after he slept. I listened to the sound of his snoring, and instead of feeling irritated or sad, I felt nothing. Nothing. And that nothingness was powerful. Because when your heart stops reacting, it becomes free. I stood near the window, watching the moonlight fall on the compound. The world outside looked peaceful. Inside me, a storm was forming, a purposeful storm. I didn't know exactly how I would leave. I didn't know when.
But I knew why.
And that was enough. I whispered to myself, "Your freedom is close." That night, I began to make the plan. When a woman prepares to leave a painful marriage, helpers appear like small lamps on a dark road. Some help knowingly, some unknowingly. Mine came from a surprising place, the same woman in the green wrapper. It happened at a small food shop near my workplace. I was there to buy bread and pap for lunch because my appetite had begun to shrink at home. I was waiting in line when someone tapped my shoulder gently. It was her. She looked nervous, but calmer than before. Her hair was braided neatly. Her eyes held sadness, but also strength, a woman who had discovered the truth and survived it. "Can I talk to you for a moment?" she asked. We stepped outside, and she took a shaky breath. "I ended everything," she said. I blocked him, changed my number, moved out of my old place. I realized he wasn't just lying to you. He was lying to me too, and to others. Others. That word hit me like cold water. She continued, I thought you needed to know because you deserve better than pain. For the first time, I felt something new toward her: gratitude. Not friendship, not closeness, but gratitude for her honesty and courage. Then she surprised me. I know a lawyer, she whispered. A woman who helps wives dealing with manipulation and emotional abuse. She helped my cousin. She doesn't charge much. She's patient. She listens. If you ever need her, call her. She handed me a small paper with a name and number. My fingers shook as I took it. This wasn't betrayal. This was sisterhood. One wounded woman helping another find her wings. Thank you, I said softly. She nodded, tears forming again. I'm sorry for everything, truly. That day, I realized something powerful. My husband didn't just lose his marriage. He was losing the women he thought he could control. And one by one, we were walking away. The paper with the lawyer's number stayed inside my purse for 3 days. I would touch it, press it between my fingers, then return it like it was something too sacred to rush. I was scared, not of leaving, but of admitting that I truly wanted to be free. One evening, after my husband shouted at me for forgetting to warm his soup, a soup he had not even told me he wanted, I walked quietly to the room and closed the door. I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. I just sat on the bed and took a long breath. Something inside me whispered, "It is time." I pulled out the small folded paper. I dialed. The lawyer's voice was calm and soft, like she had been waiting for me all her life. "My name is Ada," she said. "Take your time. Tell me everything."
And I did.
For the first time, I told my story from beginning to end. The fear, the manipulation, the loneliness, the affair, the lies, the way my heart had become smaller each year. She didn't interrupt me. She didn't judge me. She didn't rush me. When I finished, she said something that shook me. "You are not weak. You are wounded, and wounds can heal. But you need to step out of the fire first." I breathed deeply. She explained my rights, my options, and the kind of protection the law could offer me. She told me what documents to gather, what evidence mattered, and how to prepare myself emotionally. Before the call ended, she said, "Don't worry about money. Pay when you can. Your safety is more important." I didn't know people like her still existed in this world. When I hung up, I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were tired, but they were alive again. I felt something I hadn't felt in years.
Hope.
And that night, I slept without fear for the first time in a long time. Sometimes fate gives you confirmation in the strangest ways. One morning, my husband forgot his phone at home. He had rushed out in a hurry, shouting something about an emergency meeting. When I entered the bedroom to arrange the sheets, I saw the phone lying on the pillow. My heart didn't race. My fingers didn't shake. I didn't even feel fear. Curiosity? Maybe, but mostly calm. The phone wasn't locked. Or maybe he had forgotten to lock it. Either way, fate was speaking. I opened the messages, expecting to see the woman in the green wrapper. Instead, there were 3 other women. 3.
Not 1.
Not 2. 3. Different names. Different faces. Different lies. Each message carried the same dirty sweetness. "Baby, I miss you." "When are you coming?" "My body is waiting." "You know I need you." My stomach didn't turn. My heart didn't break. What hurt me long ago could not hurt me again. What I felt was something else: confirmation. Confirmation that leaving was not madness. Confirmation that my suffering had never been my fault. Confirmation that the man I had once loved had become a stranger, wearing my husband's face. As I scrolled, a message popped up on the screen. "She's still in your house? I thought you said she would leave." Everything became still. Not anger, not shock, just stillness. My presence in my own home was now an inconvenience to him. I placed the phone back exactly where it had been. I cleaned the room. I swept the floor. I arranged my things neatly. And then I took a small bag from the wardrobe and began packing the things I would eventually leave with: documents, clothes, old photos, memories that still had dignity. When he returned later, panicking and sweating, asking, "Did you see my phone?" I smiled gently.
No.
"Maybe you left it somewhere." He sighed in relief, foolish as always. He didn't know that with each lie he told, he was pushing me closer to my freedom. The more I grew quiet, the more loud he became. It was almost funny, a man who had always enjoyed control suddenly drowning in his own fear. He could feel me slipping away, even though I hadn't said a word. One evening, he came home and found me cooking yam. I could feel his eyes burning into my back, but I didn't turn. He dropped his bag loudly on the floor, crossed his arms, and said, "What is wrong with you lately?" I stirred the pot calmly. "Nothing." "Don't lie to me." His voice rose like thunder. That old, familiar fear tried to rise in me, but I swallowed it down. I was not the same woman he once controlled. I said nothing. I repeated, still stirring. He slammed his hand on the table. "You're planning something." His words were not a question. They were an accusation. I looked at him, truly looked at him, and for the first time, I saw a scared boy hiding inside a grown man's body. A boy afraid of losing comfort, not love. Afraid of losing a servant, not a partner. Afraid of losing control, not a companion. "I'm just living my life," I said softly. He hated soft. He hated calm. He hated anything he could not shake. "You think you can fool me?" he shouted, stepping closer. But when he stepped forward, I stepped back, not in fear but in decision. "I'm not arguing," I said. He stared at me like he was trying to read a language he had never learned. His anger had nowhere to land. His insults had nowhere to stick. His manipulation had no place to grow. He stormed out of the kitchen, muttering to himself. He didn't know that anger burns fastest when there is no fuel to feed it. He didn't know I had become fireproof. That night, I slept peacefully while he tossed and turned, suffocating in a storm he created with his own hands. The man who once believed he controlled everything was now losing everything, silently, slowly, painfully. By the end of that week, every piece of my escape was ready. I had gathered my documents. I had saved a little money. I had spoken with Ada, the lawyer, and she had guided me step by step on what to expect. But the most important part of the plan was timing. She told me, "Do not leave in anger. Do not leave in panic. Leave when you are at peace, because peace gives you clarity." And so I waited. I lived each day quietly, moving like wind inside the house. I gave him nothing to react to. No argument. No tears. No explanations. Just silence that wrapped around me like a shield. He grew more unstable. He searched my things when he thought I wasn't looking. He stalked me around the house, waiting for a mistake. He asked questions like a man trying to catch smoke. "Why are you dressing differently? Who are you texting? Why are you suddenly confident? Who is filling your head with nonsense?" I answered with the same calm tone. "No one." He hated it. He hated my calm more than he hated any confrontation. Ada and I fixed a day when he would be at work long enough for me to pack and leave quietly. But fate had a twist. 2 days before the planned departure, he confronted me with a fury I had not seen in years. He grabbed my wrist, squeezing it hard enough to hurt, and hissed, "You are mine. You will not embarrass me. Do you hear me?" Years ago, I might have cried. I might have apologized. I might have begged. But not anymore. I looked straight into his eyes and said, with a voice as steady as stone, "I do not belong to you." He released my hand like it had burned him. His mouth opened, but no words came out. He didn't know that those 6 words were the final warning, not a threat, but a declaration. The next day, I packed the last of my things, placing them quietly beside the door. Tomorrow, I would leave. Tomorrow, I would breathe differently. Tomorrow, everything would change. But fate wanted a dramatic ending. Morning arrived gently, like the world was giving me permission to start over. The sky was soft, the air was cool, and the sun rose slowly, as if it didn't want to rush my freedom. He had already left for work. At least, that's what I thought. I began packing everything into 2 small bags. Nothing heavy, nothing unnecessary, just the things that held meaning. My documents, my clothes, a few photographs, and the courage that had taken years to grow. I stepped outside the house and closed the door softly behind me. But just as I turned toward the gate, he stepped out from behind the wall. My heart dropped. He wasn't at work. He had stayed home. He had been watching. "Where are you going?" he asked, voice shaking with dangerous calm. For a moment, I felt the ghost of my old fear rise, but only for a moment. "I'm leaving," I said. He laughed. A broken laugh. "You think you can walk out? Just like that?" "Yes," I whispered. He moved closer, anger twisting his face like something living inside him. "You're not leaving this house." But then, like a blessing sent through the wind, footsteps echoed behind us. A police car stopped in front of the gate. 2 officers stepped out. Ada followed behind them. The same woman who helped me. The same lawyer who had believed my story. The same voice that gave me courage. One officer stepped forward. "Sir, we received a report. We need you to stay calm." My husband's eyes flew to me. Wild, shocked, betrayed by his own expectations. "You called the police on me?" he shouted. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. They spoke to him calmly, warning him, questioning him, reminding him of the law, reminding him that intimidation and emotional abuse were not invisible crimes. He tried to argue. He tried to shout. He tried to twist the story. But the truth has a sound that lies cannot silence. He was told to step back, not touch me, not threaten me, not follow me. He tried to step forward anyway, but the officers moved with him, blocking him like a wall. Ada came to me gently and touched my arm. "Are you ready?" I nodded. I picked up my bags. I walked past him, past his anger, his lies, his betrayal, his control. He called my name. I didn't look back, because people who hurt you do not deserve to see your face when you finally walk into your freedom. When I reached the gate, the morning light touched my skin like a blessing. The world smelled new again. My lungs filled with air that didn't belong to pain. And with each step, I felt my spirit whisper, "You made it. You are free."
God bless.
Hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and drop a comment telling me what you feel or which part touched you the most.